The first strategy was trying to get states to make changes first before you get a national change. So this will be our second video. All right, so the next thing is temperance and morality. The next issue is temperance and morality. So like I said, temperance also resurges post-Civil War. Urban reformers were very much attracted to this idea of temperance because the idea is that a lot of people behave badly because why? Alcohol, right? They're getting drunk. Men are going to drink where? Not there yet. Bars, which means they're not spending time where?
With their family.
But maybe working, but also not with family. So either one, right? So they're not a good worker, they're not a good husband or a good father. And if they come home drunk, they might also be what? Abusive. So the idea is that if you totally remove alcohol as an option from society, then people will behave better. And morality for society will go up. Right? That's the theory. So temperance resurges just like women's suffrage does post-Civil War with this idea if you take alcohol out the equation, everybody will act better. Right?
No.
Maybe. We'll find out, right? One organization that formed in the 1870s was the WCTU, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. The Women's Christian Temperance Union forms in the 1870s with that mission to basically try to get states convinced to abolish alcohol sales. So the WCTU tries to get states to change their laws to go to total abstinence. The lady who led this organization was a lady named Frances Willard. So Frances Willard was the leader of WCTU. Here you see them right here. They would do things like bust up into bars and saloons and start singing church hymns to basically make them want to leave so they would stop drinking. And they would get kicked out a lot of times, but they might still sing or make noise on the outside of the streets and stuff. But they'd try to be very annoying and try to do a lot of things that would make people not want to go drink. There's another group that forms in the 1890s called the Anti-Saloon League. So in the 1890s, you see the Anti-Saloon League form. Anti-Saloon League. That became also very influential, and they were able to convince 21 states to create prohibition. So they were able to convince, not all at once, but over several years, the Anti-Saloon League was able over time to convince 21 states to create prohibition. And that's something to keep in mind, that prohibition is not going to become a national law until 1919, 1920. So we're not there yet, but we're heading in that direction. It didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't like one day everybody had alcohol, the next day it didn't. That basically, just like anything else that becomes like a national law or a national policy, it was slowly building up in different areas. By 1916, when World War I is about to break out, you have over 2/3 of states already have prohibition. So to make that final shift to making it 100% wasn't that dramatic. Does that make sense? So many states were already convinced to go with prohibition before it even takes place nationally. So make sure you have that down too. Somebody else to be aware of is, that you might see show up is Carrie Nation. Carrie Nation, I can't remember if she was married to the guy or engaged to the guy, but she got engaged or married to a guy, and he became alcoholic, and they broke off the engagement. I can't remember if he robbed her or took money away from her. Not necessarily robbed, like rob, like, took money away from her or something, or went to jail, or something happened. Like, the whole relationship got soured, and the guy died or took money or something. So she became pissed off and now made her mission to do what? Because alcohol, to basically end alcohol in America. So Carrie Nation decides one day to get an axe, and she goes into this bar somewhere out west and just walks in and just starts to destroy it. So like she goes in there behind the bar, just starts to chunk the bottles and stuff at like the floor and the walls, and takes her axe and like just breaks the shit out of the place, right? Just destroys the whole building. And then no one really stops her because why? Yeah, she has acts and she's a woman, right? So they just kind of let her do it. Well, then she does it there, so she just keeps doing it. So she does get arrested from time to time. She does get arrested, goes to jail, gets out of jail, and then just goes back to doing the same thing, right? So for several years, Carrie Nation travels the country with her axe, little hatchet, giving speeches about prohibition, and occasionally tearing the bar up nearby. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, prohibition is becoming a thing more seriously now in this time period. That's what our shirt was almost last year. That it came down to two things: the bats or Carrie Nation, and they went with the bats. So yeah, obviously. It was very topical, but I'm just saying that was almost the shirt design last year. It was Carrie Nation. All right. Anyway, lastly, wrap up the morality side. It wasn't just alcohol. There was other issues too, with cities becoming massive entities with foreigners, immigrants. They thought that cities were also a breeding ground for crime and vice and drugs, which is all true. Prostitution. So there was also an effort to try to improve the morality as much as possible in cities as well. One famous example is the Comstock laws, made by a congressman named Anthony Comstock. The Comstock laws that come out in the 1870s prohibit the mailing or transport of obscene and lewd material and photos. So the Comstock law that gets passed in the 1870s prohibit the mailing or transporting of obscene and lewd material and photos. So basically, people were mailing pornography at the time. Open the mailbox and boom, there it is. Poor little children open these mailboxes up and
Oh, God.
So they pass these laws to make it illegal to do that anymore, to try to increase morality. I mean, you laugh, but it's not that different now. There's obviously a lot of TV restrictions about what you can and can't see on TV, language, right? There's parishes or counties or cities that ban serving alcohol at certain times of a weekend or day because morality, right? I mean, is there any reason not to sell alcohol at any point of any day? Can you justify selling alcohol at some point in the day? 24 hours. Is there any reason why you can't sell alcohol 24 hours a day?
No.
Why? What is the age limit, though? And that's another thing. Why is there an age limit?
Because you gotta be old enough to at least be
what's magical about 21 years old?
Your body stops developing, your brain's fully developed and matured.
So now you can start killing your brain cells with alcohol?
Hey, drink responsibly and you'll be fine.
Sure. But that's my point. What's different from 18 to 21? Because your body's not even done at 21.
Well, your brain's fully developed.
Yeah, so it's just an arbitrary date because they feel like you're more mature. But there's also, they just made federally, I don't know if this affects anybody here, but federally they just made the smoking age go up, or buying tobacco age go up to 21. So all you vaping kids.
All the poor kids who are already addicted, they gotta wait till they're 21 to get addicted.
Exactly, get back addicted. As far as I know, the law just said you can't purchase tobacco products at 18.
If you get caught under 21.
Well, that's also like the law is now. The law is you can't buy alcohol at 21, but you can legally drink alcohol at 18 with your parents, right?
You can share a meal with your dad.
At 18, right? I don't think it. No one's going to arrest you if your parents are there. I'm just saying, don't go drink and drive. You're 16 years old or whatever, but right? Ever. But once you're 18, drink and drive what you want, right? But yes, people keep buying these stupid jewels and vapes and blows up in their face and pockets, and it's they now found out like it's way worse than like cigarettes and stuff, and people out there just vaping away, right? But like there are cities. There's yes. Yes. Sure. See you later, Kobe. Unless no need. No, just go. It's fine. But there's cities or places that will ban you buying alcohol on Sundays, or like you can't buy alcohol until like afternoon on Sundays, because what's the implication? You should be in church right now, right? So like that's a thing. Like up in when I went to New England, which is kind of weird being in the South in Louisiana, but Louisiana is very different because Louisiana has always had a lot of differences because of our background. But like in Massachusetts, you can't buy alcohol on Sundays. Period. Yeah, there's places like that. Yeah, there's places. That's my point. But why? If I'm an adult and I'm 30 years old, why can't I buy alcohol? What if I go to church? Why can't I go to church now?
It's just like
Right, so that's my point. So my point is like, why does the government get to tell me as an adult when I get to drink? Right? Right. Well, that's why I live in Louisiana, right? I can. Yeah, I can go down to New Orleans and just walk out in the streets with alcohol, right? So it's all good and fun, right?
Imagine you're choosing a place to live. Who's the most lax?
Exactly. But yeah, anyway, so that's my point is that then and now, as America, we're still very much concerned with morality, and it's very different from like us versus Europe. Like Europe is much more into like censoring violence, but like they're okay with you drinking alcohol, mostly the things like wine and stuff at a younger age. And as far as like seeing nudity on TV, like they don't care because it's people's bodies, right? Don't make it a thing, it won't be a thing, right? But they think violence or seeing violence is much worse than seeing like boobs on TV. Where here it's like the exact opposite, right? You see a pair of boobs and you're just corrupted for the rest of your life, I guess. So. No going back.
Great conversation.
All right. Anyway, so going forward, looking at intellectual and cultural movements as well too. So there's some changes in education in the late 1800s as well. So one big change that does take place in the late 1800s is a big push of public education. This kind of starts in the 1840s, back during that big reform movement with like Four Horsemen and all that. Bless you. But public education becomes much bigger post-Civil War. So many states begin to push for taxes to pay for schools post-Civil War. And that's thanks to industrialization. You want a better educated workforce because what's the case? You get better workers, right? Smarter and better and more capable workers. Also, what you don't realize, and this is still very much true, think about how the school day is structured. You come to school at a certain time. The day starts with a bell. You're told to move around every day with the bell, right? You're told to respect like your teachers or like a boss, right? You have a certain dress code. So all these things you're learning now that you've learned since kindergarten is what?
Teaching you
how to be a worker bee, right? You're learning how to be a worker in the real world, right? That, and it's always one of those things like, why do I do this homework assignment? What's the point of doing this or that? I mean, yeah, I get it. You may not use this or have this in life, whatever. You may not need to know this certain thing in some class, but guess what? In your job, no matter what it is, there's going to be some task that you're told to do by your boss that you have to do, or else what happens? You get fired, right? There's no obligation for them to keep you at that job. And that's the kind of same thing you're learning here in a school setting too. But back then, where basically your day was controlled by the whistle, where they told you when to show up, when to eat, and all that, it's kind of the same exact thing for school, right? And so this is all a result of industrialization, is my point, right? With more people with more states having compulsory laws forcing kids to go to school, it does lead to an increased literacy rate. By 1900, 9% of the population has literacy. So you have a literacy rate of 9% by 1900, which is very good. but more states are requiring kids to go to school, usually at this time from like first grade through about middle school, maybe 6th, 7th grade, something like that. High schools are still kind of a new concept right now. So public education right now only requires you to go about elementary through middle-ish school. And if you could or had the money to, you can go to like some kind of college or something else after that. We also borrow early childhood education concepts from Germany with kindergarten. So kindergarten is a concept borrowed from Germany where you do a lot of early education prep with kids.
Isn't kindergarten itself a German word?
Correct. Kindergarten. But high schools are fairly new. So high schools were kind of a new concept or were not that prominent everywhere. Like you don't have high schools or even requirements to go to high school everywhere. But typically high schools back then did a lot more prepping you for the industrial workforce. While you might learn things like civics or history or English or literature, you also learn a lot of like practical skills too, like mechanics or shop, different types of skills, drafting, things that you would take into the workforce. So that's kind of how high school looked initially, but it was not required you had to go and complete it quite yet. Even now, you're only required to be in school until 17. But that if you make it at 17, you might as well finish, right? Unless you're still struggling along like an 8th, 9th grade or something like that, right? So maybe you should pursue other avenues. So who knows? But like Zachary High is again created until 1914. Baton Rouge High was late 1800s, and that was really it for a long time. You had Catholic and St. Joseph's as well, but those are some of the first ones in this area. But you just don't have a lot of high schools because it wasn't really a normal thing back in those days. So we'll stop the second video.